Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Coffee and Open Source, a place to meet some new friends, have some great conversations, and maybe learn something along the way. I'm your host, Isaac Levin. If you're enjoying the conversations here, be sure to like, subscribe, follow wherever you're watching or listening. Also, if you or someone you know would like to come on the show and have a chat with me, feel free to reach out to me on whatever social media platform you're on, and I'm probably on it. And the best way to find it is if you go to isaacrilevin.com. There'll be a list of all the different places that you can find me. All right, so with that out of the way, we were having an interesting chat about a couple of different things before we got started. I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation with them. So today, my guest is Don Mackinnon. Don, do you want to say hello? Introduce yourself.
Hey, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Don Mackinnon. I'm the CTO and Co-Founder of Searchcraft.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking a little bit about like search in general before we got started, and I'm looking forward to kind of having some more of that conversation. But I kind of want to know for you how it got started. Like, when did you realize that like tech was the thing for you?
Sure. Yeah. So I've been working in tech for a long time. I originally went to school for electrical engineering
Okay.
because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I thought like, hey, robots are cool or whatever. But then I really got into like the code classes there. And so I switched over to CS and stuck with that. And then, I got into building things for the web. So at first there's like just my own like little fun personal sites. But then after college, I got a job working in the publishing industry, building websites for like magazines and whatnot.
Oh, cool.
So I did that for quite a long time. I worked my way up in the publishing industry, building these websites, and then getting into like more high profile websites, and then like managing teams of developers and getting into like building CMSs and things like that. And then eventually I started doing like a lot of like data migration work with these CMS platforms, and then that kind of led towards getting into building out search. So I kind of got pulled into building out search experiences for like these news and media websites using Elastic. That was kind of what we used to build them. So my first foray into Elastic was with version 5.
Okay.
Yeah, so I got to learn that pretty well. I had to,
Yeah.
get some training on it.
Yeah, I mean that's great. I think, one of the things I'd love to kind of learn from you, like so you said you were electrical engineering and then you kind of went into computer science, computer engineering. Like I imagine that at one point you had kind of like that overlap where you had to do a little bit of like hardware work in the computer science curriculum, right? Where you were
Mhm.
like using assembler or some other low level language to like interface with like breadboards. Like, did you enjoy those classes and that was kind of the thing that helped you make your decision?
Yeah, I feel like that ecosystem is like progressed so much now. Like now there's
Sure.
like
Yeah.
Arduino and whatnot, and you can like it's much easier to like, okay, I need to tweak the firmware for this Arduino board to do this, right? So
Yeah.
like, um, but yeah, I like the reason I got into EE is because in high school I was doing like designing my own circuits and kind of
Mm.
like you could like do it on the breadboard, but you can also do this thing where it's like you draw the circuit path with like a Sharpie and then you etch it in chemical bath and it makes
Okay.
a circuit, right? So
Well,
we
that's
had these
I didn't know that was a thing. I did not know. That's cool.
yeah. I mean, you can't get very complicated
Sure.
with
Of
circuit
course.
paths,
Of
but
course.
you're with a Sharpie, but yeah.
I mean, it's still pretty cool. Like, I think, I'm thinking of, my kids have like miscellaneous things like that. Like, there's this kids toy that like has a bunch of circuit pieces and like they kind of clip in like buttons, right? And like you
Hmm.
can build like intricate circuits. And I remember my kids loving that because like, you press a button and it makes like a speaker go off with like a siren or whatever, like stuff like that. Um, Plus like you're kind of learning like math, you're learning kind of how science works all at the same time, which is super interesting for kids. um so so with that, like, what do you remember, like the first programming class like you took, and like the first like real programming task you were given, like that kind of kickstarted all of it?
I mean, well, for fun, I'm sure like most people, so I'm Gen X, most people of my generation probably did like Logo. I
Sure.
don't know if you remember that
Yeah, yeah.
language. You move the little turtle thing around.
Hmm.
So that was my first programming class in like third grade. But in like middle school, at that time, I was using the Mac SE, and I had an interest in making video games for myself.
Sure.
So there was a program that I forget who made it, but it made it really easy for you to build like RPG style games, right?
Oh,
Very
cool.
simple. So that was it.
Like all text based.
You could bring in your own art, but I wasn't an artist, so like
Sure,
I'd find
sure.
clip art, like I'd find clip art and put it into the game for those assets, or I'd find like sound effects that I'd put into the game. But yeah, it was kind of like a decision tree like
Yeah,
logic structure, right? Like, okay, if player does this, go over here, right?
sure.
So
Oh, that's fun. Like, I think a lot of us too, like, I think we're first enamored by like games and technology. And to this day, like, I've not met very many people who like work in the game industry. Because I think there's, I think if we've all seen like, I don't know if you've seen the show Vision Quest, where it's like, um, where it's like, oh, the gaming industry, that sounds terrifying. But yeah, like I think for all of us, like the idea of like, oh, I want to like even my kid is like, oh, I want to build games for Roblox, like that's their thing, and I'm like,
yeah.
okay, that sounds cool. They're like, yeah, I'm gonna build games for like a living, and I'm like, maybe we'll see. Um,
Yeah, it's definitely like not for the faint of heart from what I've
yeah,
heard. I've never worked in the game industry professionally, but I hear about like the crunch issues and like, okay, well, once the game ships, unless they're staying around to do DLC, like you have to find your next job, right?
yeah,
So
yeah, or like the immediate like, okay, what's next? Like, what's the next? Like, we just ship a game. Like, what's the next big idea? What's the next flagship sort of thing? Like, or people do like the DLC or like microtransaction stuff. Um, yeah, I mean the gaming industry is like super fascinating because I was thinking about this because we bought our kids like a Switch 2 recently, and like I was looking at the price of games, and like Switch 2 games are like $80, and I was like, I remember like PlayStation games when I was growing up, or like Super Nintendo games was like 30, 40,
hmm
and like for them to double in price in like 20 years is pretty wild.
yeah, they just keep creeping up. And of course, they're still going to do their microtransactions, right? Like,
Sure, sure.
oh, I got to buy skins and whatever.
Yeah. Well, and that was a big thing too, where I mean, like again, my kids play Roblox and there's so much microtransactions in it. Like, oh, can we use some of our money to buy Robux? And I'm like, no, no, you can't. Like, like I don't think you need to get like, I don't know. They play like this gardening game. Like one of my kids plays like this gardening
hmm
game, and like one of the things you can buy is like a red panda. I'm like, you don't need to buy like a red panda, even though that would be awesome in your garden, a red panda. But I don't think you need it per se. Uh, so
Yeah, my kids do the same thing, the Robux and also, Fortnite and all of that.
yeah, we haven't gotten into Fortnite yet. My kids are 10 and 8, or 7
Okay.
and 9, about to turn 10 and 8. So we haven't really decided to do the Fortnite thing. But I mean, the Roblox thing is, I think, just as bad. It's just with like, it's just not as in your face as like the violence of Fortnite, but there's still a ton of violence in Roblox, right?
Yeah, it depends on whatever game they're playing, I guess.
Yeah. So, like you mentioned that like you started out like in the publishing industry. Was that just because like that was the first job that you got and you kind of went through
Mm.
that path and just, or was it something that you like truly found interesting?
I
And
guess I kind of
yeah.
skipped a step. So, I had a job. My path into publishing was because I had a job at a startup, and we were building on this platform called Story Server. It was really big at the time, and that startup was building a whole CMS around this platform.
Oh, okay.
Um, and that platform was written in a language called Tickle, um,
Tickle.
which
So
is yeah
okay.
TCL. Yeah.
Okay, so like that's okay. Let's take a break. Tell me what this language is. Like, is it a object oriented? Is it more of a scripting? What kind of language is it?
Yeah, it's like a scripting language. Tickle TCL. It's short for Tool Command Language. Um, a lot of people prior to this kind of like CMS kind of this before storage server, they used it as like a glue language to glue different things
Okay.
together between different systems. But this whole platform is written with that. So if you're familiar with like JSP pages or things like that,
Yep.
where it's like you have some HTML and you can also have some dynamic code blocks. That's essentially like what it was, but with Tickle. But yeah, not object oriented.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm just kind of fascinated because I've never heard of it. And it's probably just because like active server pages was like the thing, like for me,
Mm-hmm.
or like you said, JSP. Um, so I mean, I don't want to call it a niche language, but is it kind of like, I mean, did you learn that before you got
Well,
started in this job, or was it one that kind of like you
no.
learned on the fly?
So I guess I'll go back even further. My actual first professional language was writing Perl.
Oh,
Um,
I'm sorry.
so if we're going to go all the way back in the resume here,
Yeah.
so I worked for I had a job working for Financial Times, but not doing publishing stuff. It was building. They had information from utilities on like electric generation, natural gas throughput through pipelines and things like that.
Yeah.
So I was writing a lot of code to take the raw data and then build out reporting systems around it.
I see.
So like, and then what they would do is they would sell this information to like utility traders, people buying and selling electric and gas. So they would know like the trends in the market and then buy futures and stuff based off of that information.
Oh, cool. I jokingly like said, I don't know if you heard me, but it's like you said I worked in Perl and I said I'm sorry.
No,
did you like Perl? Did you
no.
no? And I had this whole thing like that's one of I had a class in college that was like I don't even remember. It was like building for the web or something like that, or it's like building with new, quote unquote new languages, because like C++ or like Java was like the stuff in my college. So like it was a class. It was like it started with Ruby and then went to Perl and then it went to PHP, I think. And I just remember like Perl, I just didn't get it. I had a really hard time with it. And I know that a lot of people have been very successful writing stuff in Perl, but like, I imagine that was like that wasn't the first language you learned, right? So like so when you went to Perl, you were like, okay.
Well,
Or
my first language, I guess the first like real language that I learned was C. I learned that
okay.
at school, right? That's kind of like the foundation. But so there's so many languages that have been influenced by it that if you know C well, then you can like pick up other languages.
Yeah. Basically,
so
if you know the bracket syntax, you're pretty solid, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Like if statements and importing headers and whatever. It's you learn the basics. Perl, like I always joke, like if you work in Perl, it's like you can write code and then like if you don't look at it for like a month, you'll totally forget what you did. Like,
oh, sure.
Because the syntax is so arcane.
I feel like that with all code that I write. Like, I'll come back to something that I did like 6 months ago, and I'm like, what is this? Like, who did this? This isn't me. Like for some reason, I dissociate when I build things. So I'll look at code that I wrote. And I'm just like, okay, that works. I mean, I wouldn't have done it that way if it was me. And then I realized it was me. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it really depends on like what your mindset is at a particular point in time. It's like, oh, I need like, am I trying to like write good code? Am I trying to like just get code done? Like, I think that kind of dictates like how we think about writing stuff too.
Yeah, like are you laying a foundation for something to build upon? Like long term, or is it just like I just need to do this one thing this one time and I don't care about what it looks like?
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed that now for like the latter of your examples, like I just need something bang bang. I just get ChatGPT to do it. Like one of the things that I joke about all the time with some of my other tech friends is like I'm horrible with Bash. Like I don't remember any of the commands. I don't remember any of like the syntax for like looping over files or anything like that, right? So I've just like, I need to do something in Bash, ChatGPT it, and just copy and paste it into an SH file and do the ch mod and just go with it. Like, because I'm never gonna learn Bash for whatever reason. My brain just doesn't work. I know like most of the, I know most of the shorthand stuff, but like things like when $ signs start to come into play, like lots of $ signs, I get lost very quickly.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things too that is kind of interesting, like as we're on the topic of AI, is like, how much like AI comes to play with like all the other computing that you do. Like, when was the last time that you like had to pick up a new language, or you had to learn like a new topic? Like, did you use like traditional learning materials like videos or blogs, or did you kind of like go more towards like the give me this the synapse or the synonym like with AI? Like, what did you do?
Um, okay, so well, I mean, historically, I would like back in the day, I'd get a course or read a book or watch some videos
Yeah,
or read blog posts, things like that. But like lately, it's yeah, I go to AI and ask questions about like if I were to do this in this language, how would I do it, right?
yeah,
So that's for like the quick and dirty. Like there's some languages like I just need to do this one thing, but I don't work in this day to day, so
sure.
like and I want to just get up to speed quickly on it. So like bang this out, help me solve this problem. But then once I've kind of like worked in it for a bit, I'll kind of dig into the community and find out like, okay, like what are like professional people who write this code doing?
Yeah,
Like what are their standards and practices? Like how do I write this
people that are
thing?
serious. Like, what did they
Yeah.
do? Yeah, yeah.
Like how
Uh,
do I do that? Like for example, like I don't write a lot of Python, but I would say like I find out like how do I do things the Python way versus like,
mhm.
me as someone who mostly writes Rust and TypeScript do it, because if you come from the mindset of another language and try to transpose it onto something else, like
Yeah.
it's usually not great.
Yeah, well, no, for sure. Like, it's just, I mean, I'm very guilty of it too, where I try to solve a problem for like a new language that I'm trying to learn, thinking like I'm doing it for the old language. Like, okay, I need a class here, and then this class I need this thing, and then I'm like, oh, like I'm basically writing like C sharp or like whatever in like TypeScript. Which, I
Hmm.
mean, yes, there are some similarities like we talked about, but like at the end of the day, like there is a JavaScript, TypeScript way to go about things, right? Because you have access to different APIs and things in the browser and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, speaking of like browser stuff, like when did you really fall in love with the web? Was it just because of a job, or is like you like kind of like the instant sort of gratification that you got, like you update a web page and you hit refresh and it would just be there?
Oh yeah, it was definitely like high school, college. Like I put up like there used to be it's gonna really date me now. There used to be a community called GeoCities.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so you could just have a free website and put something up, right? If you can write HTML, you can just FTP it up and it's there. So
Mm.
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, GeoCities, like it's a little bit before me. Like I'm kind of the MySpace page generation, where it's like
Mhm.
updating your MySpace page was like the cool thing. Um, yeah. So you then went through like the transition from like web, I guess regular to like web 2.0, where like everything was JavaScript, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, do you remember that time and like, do you have any sort of memories from there? It's like, okay, well, now like there's an expectation to like make pages look nice and also make pages like somewhat responsive and like not refresh constantly. Like, do you remember like some memories from that time?
Yeah. So when people first started like using smartphones, um, a lot of companies have this approach where like we're going to have a separate mobile site. Like
Sure.
here's your desktop experience, and then like you go to like m.domain.com, and that's your mobile site, right? And
Sure.
then there would be some kind of like detection on the load balancer to kind of funnel you into one of those experiences. And then um, later, as like CSS kind of like grew up and became like, okay, now we have like things like media queries. We can actually do this responsive layouts with the same code. That kind of shifted away from that like mobile only like site and
Yeah.
desktop site were two separate things, right? And then if you were lucky enough to work with a designer that understood that, they would design kind of like mobile first, and then you would kind of take it from that approach. As far as like the whole like, okay, we're gonna start moving towards like the single page application experience, like without we're not going like page load. Um, there were some predecessors to like React, right? There were things
Sure.
like Moo tools. You had handlebar templates. So that's kind of like before we had React, you would do things with like handlebar templates and like jQuery or Moo tools or something like that, right? So you'd have some interactivity, and then you would kind of manually like bind that to like HTML elements
Yeah.
and like, okay, like I'm gonna swap the inner HTML when someone clicks this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then that all kind of got like formalized with frameworks later.
Yeah, oh for sure. Like, I remember jQuery, like I was having this conversation on a previous version of this podcast where it's like my first like I guess spa was like Dojo, was like this like language named
Hmm.
Dojo that it's still around, quote unquote, but like it didn't really pick up like Angular JS did. Um but like I still think about, you know, the different iterations of the JavaScript frameworks we've kind of like been forced to consume, like starting with like vanilla JavaScript, like whatever document.get element by ID, and then jQuery, and then like some more enhanced version of jQuery, and then start drifting into like the React Vue Angular world, and now it's like
Hmm.
here's like something that sits on top of React, or here's something that sits on top, and like you kind of have like these nested frameworks on top of each other. Um, which thank goodness like I'm not somebody that like had to pay a ton of attention to that space because it just seems like it moves way too fast.
Yeah, it really like for a while it felt like, oh, there's something new every like 3 months that like, oh, now everyone's going over to here, so like we have to learn how to go over here.
Yeah. And it's also too like I mean, like you mentioned the whole thing about the phone where it's like, you know, we have like this expectation that everything like looks good on a phone, looks good on a desktop, looks good on a tablet, looks good on a 50-inch TV. It's funny because like you talk about like the web before like JavaScript frameworks, like you mentioned GeoCities, like every GeoCities page looked basically the same, right?
Hmm.
And it's funny that now we have like this unlimited configurability of like what web pages can look like.
Yeah, totally.
So when did search like become like a thing specifically for you? I know you talked about a little bit of and about your background, but like you know obviously you've been in this space for a while. Like what interested you so much to like kind of keep with it?
Um, so like you work in the web for a while, you like building sites and apps is cool, but like after a while they're all the same. You're just doing the
Sure.
same thing over and over, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay,
Forms over data.
slapping together some navigation, piping
Yeah.
some data in, add some reactivity. Like it's like you can only do that so many times where you're like, okay, well, like let's solve some like harder problems. And so search is one of those areas where it's like typically you have to have some like training or knowledge about like how search engines work as far as like how is relevancy calculated.
Mm,
What does it mean? Why do you index things? Why do you why does a search data store work differently than like Postgres or MySQL, right? Like because they're different types of storage for information.
sure.
Um, so what attracted me to search is like it's a different problem space than like just building for web, right?
Yeah.
Finding it's you're constantly kind of like refining the application based on user feedback.
Sure.
You do that with websites too, like if you get feedback from users that are like it's difficult to use or like you see drop off in the funnel or whatever, like you refine. But with search, pretty immediately like if people aren't getting what they are looking for. So that like whole like detection of user intention, I found to be a very interesting problem.
Yeah, no, it's definitely fascinating, and we were talking a little bit about this before we got started. Like, is what search means to people now, right? I mean, I think the transition from like I think I said it before we got started, like from a search bar to a text box. Like,
Hmm.
what do you feel is like, what is the best user interface for search? Is it voice? Is it a search bar? Is it text where you can put in kind of like a longer prose? Like in your opinion, like what is ideally like the best like user interface for search?
Sure. I think it's all of those things and also more, because a lot of people don't consider this, but I consider what Searchcraft does, what I work in. It's information discovery, and
Yeah.
search is a method within inside of that kind of realm, that science of information discovery. So right now, yeah, we have a search box. People type something in. It could be like a keyword. It could be like a question. There, I would say, with AI becoming so prevalent now and this like chat experience, there is some confusion as far as like the user interface goes.
Yeah.
Because some people expected, like, I just want to type a keyword and get something back right away, but other people want to ask a more long form question where, like, what happened, 20 years ago with in this town on this
Sure.
day, kind of thing, right? Like, and there's more of like a analysis that has to happen to get what they expect back for that, and
Yeah.
that's kind of like a different back end kind of like process to happen for that to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, and you talked very briefly about like the word indexing, right? Like what that means as it pertains to like, you know, it's not just like search is like a giant like, ampersand on both sides, or not ampersand, percent sign on both sides. And it's like, okay, you're just gonna do a fuzzy search across that. Like, no, like there's, all sorts of things you need to consider, like how related are two words to each other and things like that. And I think,
Hmm.
it's just a very interesting problem to solve. And it's substantially different than, the things that you're doing where you are with kind of like more, I guess, company data versus like consumer data, which is like people use Google or people use ChatGPT or whatever, right? Like, so for you, like, when you're talking to a business or you're talking to somebody that's at a customer that's in tech and talking about what search means, like how much do you differentiate between the two?
um yeah, I mean, it's a, well, something like search within like Instagram or TikTok is a different problem than like Google searching the web, right? Like,
Sure.
they are related spheres, but the scales are different, and the expected kind of like response is different, right?
Sure.
Um, and search is really like the reason, like, the indexing, and we use a different data store is just because search engines are built around user trying to solve for user intention, right?
Sure.
So
Sure.
like you said, like the words can mean different things. If I'm using a different language, like I'm my native language is French or something, like the meanings can be different in different languages, right?
Yeah.
Then whereas like database, it's like you're more concerned about like relationships between information versus like translating intention.
Yeah.
So um but also Google and like, okay, like a vertical search within a platform, they also have opposing forces within their business model of like how they're trying to solve things, right? Like, so like Google very much, it's like that's their monetization platform,
Sure.
right? Their intention is to maximize monetization, whether that be for like paid listings or whatever, paid search, right? Whereas if I'm searching on like a website, the people who built that site, obviously they want to get people the most relevant information, so they keep clicking through the site.
Yeah.
So they're kind
Yeah.
of
No.
optimized for different things.
Yeah. No. It's fascinating. And then like when I think of like, if I'm working at a company and I like, I have like a knowledge base where it's like a huge combination. Maybe I have stuff in Google Drive, maybe I have stuff in Confluence, maybe I have stuff all over, right? And like if I'm thinking of like how do I search across all these different mediums, knowing that data is probably stored differently, I'm probably flagging things differently, I'm probably using different language, and like trying to figure out like, hey, I want to search for all the times like this particular issue happened, and it's searched across like 10 platforms. Like, what are some of the things that I probably need to think about when I'm trying to build out a system that does that?
Yeah, so I mean that is a great use of like a search engine, because you have data coming from different sources that are not the same, right? So like you have like PDFs, or I have video, or I have images, right? And so you're mixing structured and unstructured information. So in order to kind of like effectively go through all of that together, you have to take this unstructured content and figure out a way to add information around it, like metadata, right? Like, and there's multiple ways you can do that. Like you can have it run through like what's called like an ingestion pipeline that tags the content for you. So like,
Sure.
I have a photo, and you get information about the photo itself, like, but also like the composition of what's in it, or the video, like transcripts, making transcripts searchable, text to speech, also like who are the subjects in this, what's the mood, what's the scene, like those are all things you can make searchable. But what the people who are building the application choose to prioritize is important. It kind of depends on like what problem you're trying to solve. So like if you're doing like a knowledge base, you're gonna prioritize, I want to prioritize the most relevant information, versus like, let's say I'm a news organization, maybe I want to prioritize more towards recency than
Sure.
the most necessarily relevant information. Or from like a digital asset management system like a Dropbox or something, like my needs are going to be different there too than from like just a general like knowledge store.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's like a little bit of like yes to everything you just said, right? Because if I'm like an end user, or if I'm like a, I can't remember the exact like a, there's an exact phrase for these sort of people, knowledge worker. If I'm like a knowledge worker, like I just want, hey, give me all the information I need to be able to do my job, right? And, what are your thoughts on like, where's the responsibility lie between, because you're talking about a lot of things like tagging metadata and basically defining where folks are going. Like, because at the end of the day, like a lot of these systems are kind of like very sophisticated conditionals, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so, where is the onus for a lot of this? Is it on the technical side? Is it on the user side? Is it a little bit of marrying of both? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think, well, yes, both, but if you're doing the tech well, you should try to make it as seamless as possible for the people consuming it, right? Like, I think sometimes like expecting people to know how to like, as developers, we understand like, okay, well, if I want to find in here, I'll click this filter, or I'll move this slider to like limit my date range, or whatever, right? But like the average layperson may not do that, right?
Sure.
So it's kind of a compromise between like maximum flexibility, but also making it simple enough for your general people to use, right?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I'm curious to hear from you is like, what do you think, and you might even know this from kind of what you folks do. It's like, what is like the most common platform that people want to enable search on? Is it email? Is it Is it data? Like drive data? Is it Word documents? Like what sort of like what is probably in your opinion like the most searched content type that exists out there in the enterprise?
I mean, we like to say it's like if you have information, it needs to be searchable. Like
Sure.
anytime you get to a certain threshold, like it becomes you notice it. It's painful if you don't have a good search experience.
Yeah.
Um, so documentation is really big. That is a space that you definitely need to have search, because it's painful to just know where you're going without it, right?
Yeah.
So like I would say it's the number one place. We do a lot of work with people in the publishing ecosystem, just because of my background
Yeah.
and my co-founder's background. We have a lot of people we know in that space, and that's another area where it's like previously they were relying on Google to kind of send them traffic, right?
Sure. Sure.
And so their search experience didn't need to be great, honestly. But now I would say within the last like 12 to 24 months, it's become a hotter, actually more like 12 to 6 months. It's been more of a hot top of mind uh, topic, right? Where they're like, oh, now we have to actually own kind of our information discovery layer, because we're not getting traffic from Google. We need people who come here to be able to find stuff and stay longer, right?
Yeah.
They need to maximize people that do come in the door. And they have like a wealth of content, some of these publications that go back quite some time into the past. And if they make that search experience better, it's like that's content they can monetize that they weren't monetizing before.
Yeah, I think too, it's like, there's this struggle of like you talked about kind of when folks have like all of this domain knowledge or kind of tribal knowledge, like extracting that out of people's brains that like you can actually use to like benefit others, right? It's super challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and this is just an issue like in that side of the house, but it's also in tech too, where it's like, oh, Jeff here knows how to like do this particular thing, knows how to like reboot this server without causing a bunch of issues. And, what if Jeff wants to leave the company? Like, who is the next person in line that is going to be able to do that thing, right? So, like, what are some
Right.
things, like, when you talk, obviously, when you go to a customer or somebody in business, and you're asking, like, some of the things that they're probably going to have to change on their people or culture side to kind of accommodate global search or search across a bunch of different platforms. What are some of the things that you tell them, like, things that they're going to have to do on their end before you even come in to help out?
Well, I mean, so your search is only going to be as relevant as the information you feed into it.
Sure.
So if they aren't like categorizing information properly or tagging things, either they're going to need to do that, or you're going to have some kind of system to do that work for them.
Sure.
So and you can build tech around it, but honestly, it's like the behavior of the people in the company themselves, and they need to kind of have that mindset of like enriching their own information and kind of like applying taxonomies to things. Taxonomies are huge, and I think that's like the biggest benefit typically you would get with your information.
Yeah, have you like I mean, have you ever seen in your time like people being kind of reluctant to search? Like, why do I need search? Like I know where everything is already. Like, and how do you kind of combat that?
Yeah, I mean, there is some pushback sometimes where people they don't recognize the value immediately, right? You're like, well, I could just search for it on Google and find what I'm looking for. Well, that used to be the argument,
Sure.
right? It's less now because they're doing now Google's doing these generative summaries and not directing traffic to them, referral traffic. So like it's easier to argue against that now. Like you shouldn't kind of build on their platform. You should build your own platform, make your own platform better. Um, but you just have to like, yeah, it's sometimes it's just you have to have that conversation with them to kind of guide them towards the value proposition of what searchable.
You made an interesting point, and this is something that I do want to talk about. It's like, you know, when people use like traditional search methods and they're given kind of AI generated content, right? Like I think, I was having this conversation with somebody the other day you know, what does that do like just from a consumer perspective? Like let's say like I'm looking for, taco recipes. That's for a reason I always use taco recipes. So like I'm looking for taco recipes and, I say taco recipe into a search engine. And instead of it giving me like a list of links of like websites that have taco recipes, I'm given like that information like right there in the search results page. So it kind of like it's sort of it's interesting to me because it's a better experience for users because they're not having to like hunt around and click, but it's also bad for users because maybe they're being given information they don't want. And then on the business side, like taking away traffic is never ideal, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so we'll take that specific example. You're gonna get a taco recipe back, but who made that taco recipe? Is it the
Yeah.
best taco recipe, in your opinion? Like, or is it the most? It's just the one that was found first versus like necessarily the one that the community thought was the best taco recipe, right?
Yeah.
So when you're trying to go deep into like specific knowledge of like, okay, let's go into the cuisine of tacos. You're probably going to want to go to a site that's like a recipe site, right? Like, and then maybe not only do I want taco recipes, but like I don't want to go to the grocery store and do some shopping. So like I want to
Yeah.
find taco recipes that I can make with what I have in the house, right?
Yeah.
And at that point, you need a search engine because you're going to be like, okay, tacos that are chicken only and use like romaine lettuce or whatever, you know?
Sure, sure. Yeah, but I mean, even to like add on to what you're saying, it's like maybe the the results that the search algorithm give you, they're not even like actual results. It's just kind of AI generated based on a bunch of information that it's collected over the course of time, right?
Hmm.
Like, it so maybe it's giving you a taco recipe that's never existed in the history of taco recipes, but you don't know that, right?
Yeah.
But also, like, like I mentioned, the business side of it, right? Where, I think that it's safe to say that there is a little bit of kind of concern in like the industry about, okay, well, people aren't going to my websites as much because they're getting this information from Google search or ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, right? Like, what are some of the things that you're seeing like out there? It's like that are, I guess, signals for, I guess, the new way people are trying to get information.
Yeah, so they are talking to these AI interfaces more, and maybe necessarily not clicking through once they get into their information, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think but to your point, is like it could be a recipe that it just made up, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe it's strung together different pieces of information you're trained upon, and it put together a combination of ingredients that maybe doesn't taste good because it doesn't know, right? It's just suggesting things. Um, so I think there's a couple of areas that could be solved better in that, like improving the trust of these systems. Um, and that can be accomplished by having transparency on like where it got its information from,
Sure.
right? Like, so like, and we're starting to see more of that, like the citing of sources, right? Like, oh, it pulled from these sources out, and some of them do it already. Like these sources on the web is where it pulled information from, so you know exactly like where it generated this response from.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's all like fascinating where we're kind of progressing from like I need an answer now to like just give me the answer. Um,
Mhm.
so let's transition a little bit and talk a little bit about, you mentioned Searchcraft a bit. Like I think that there's some value in just talking about, what Searchcraft is and what value it brings to folks.
Sure. Yeah. So we work in information discovery. We are developer tools. So our audience is very much first is developers, but we like to also say all types of builders, right? And what we mean by that is like you could be a 20-year veteran developer, or you could be like a product person who needs to build an MVP for their application. Like we want to enable all builders of all levels kind of with what we're building here at Searchcraft. And the way we do that is like we're trying to reduce complexity, so you don't have to be kind of like a back-end search expert already.
Sure.
Like I come from a background in search, but like people using our application, I don't expect them to have that skill set. And that was a big problem we saw uh, in our history. Like we were software consultants. We consult and build a lot of apps for startups,
Hmm.
and handoff was kind of always a problem in that like we knew how to manage search clusters like these competing tools, but like if we had to hand it off to a team of like 3 TypeScript developers, they may not
Sure.
have
Sure.
any experience in managing search clusters, right?
Yeah.
So we tried to abstract a lot of that complexity out, so the majority of people don't have to worry about that. And once you kind of have Searchcraft integrated into your platform, people like on the product and marketing team could go in and tune relevancy without having to necessarily burden developers to make those changes, right? So you
Sure.
don't have to wait. It allows you to ship faster and move faster, right? So you're not waiting for like, okay, well, let's get these changes in the sprint, and we'll have to wait for the dev team to have bandwidth to do that.
Yeah.
Right now,
Yeah.
we just do it.
Yeah. No, I mean it's super valuable, and especially like as a developer, like I think you hit the nail on the head where, developers have so many things they have to worry about.
Mhm.
Developer environments and platforms they're deploying to, and what tools they're using, and what LLMs they're using, and all these sort of things, and then having to kind of learn a completely new domain on top of that is extremely challenging, right? Um, so obviously, like you're kind of developer focused. What is the developer experience like? Is it just as simple as like use the language here's a set of APIs? Like talk a little bit about like how a developer can go about getting started with Searchcraft.
Yeah, there's a few different avenues. So we make clients for different languages, right? So like our platform is written in Rust, but you don't have to know Rust to use Searchcraft, right? So like that you could use like Node.js client and do it that way. You could use we have front end SDKs, so you can just pull those in, and that will actually communicate to the API for you if you just provide it your API key and your index name, right? And then at that point, what you're doing is just kind of massaging the UI to match your application at that point. If you're like, if you have a CMS, we have integrations for those where you just like pull in the plugin, and then it actually handles like sending data from your publishing platform into our system. And it handles like, okay, you can have the layout that we give you and you're good to go. You maybe just adjust the styling or whatever.
Yeah.
So we don't have, we're not in every language and every platform yet, but like that's something we're building towards.
Sure. What are the languages you support today?
So we have PHP, we have JavaScript. That's about it right now because we're still like pretty new, but we're going to we're working on a Laravel Scout integration. And we have our WordPress plugins under review currently. We're also going to be targeting like Ghost CMS, Strappy, a few others. We'll probably do a Ruby on Rails integration.
Yeah, I mean that's it's a fair amount of languages for just getting started too, right? So like that's totally awesome. I mean, I'm thinking about it from like a developer's perspective because like I'm so accustomed to like if I need to search for something, like it's a glorified SQL query or a glorified MongoDB call or whatever, right? Like I need to search across information that's in some data source, right? So like from a programming perspective, like what are some things that I need to consider? Like because obviously writing a SQL query is a bit different than writing a query against a tool like Searchcraft, right?
Yeah, so we do have a query language that's very much inspired by the Lucene syntax.
Yep. Okay.
We don't use Lucene, but we chose that because search engineers are familiar with that already, right? Elastic uses it, LucidWorks uses it, Solr uses it because they're all built on Lucene. So that's kind of why we chose that syntax. But so like that's one way of querying Searchcraft through the API. We also are getting quite a bit of traction with our MCP server. So you don't even necessarily need to know how to write in our query language if you don't want to. If you want to just build something really quick, you can just pull down the MCP server and then like build your app with that, right? Like connect it to Claude or whatever. And we have all the APIs are like there's tools for them. So you can just natural language like build me this query and it'll do it for you.
Yeah. What are your thoughts
on that? Goes back to go ahead.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, it's I always joke, like I have a friend who jokes about like the fact that like he had a 3-page resume and like the cloud eliminated like 1 page of his resume. So it's like, we're talking about kind of figuring out effective ways to like write SQL queries for like common users, right? Like what are your thoughts on that, right? Because obviously if a developer is looking at that SQL query or whatever, like that's cool because hopefully a developer knows Lucene syntax, knows like indexes in that particular data store. But like in the hands of like somebody who doesn't know how to write Lucene queries, like that's potentially dangerous, right?
Yeah, I mean, I see it all the time. People who don't like like I would say dabblers or whatever, or maybe they're just not familiar with the syntax of that language, and they write something, and while it returns information, it's very inefficient, right? Like you're like burning a lot of CPU to get results back, and the load time is really slow because they were not familiar enough with the language. So our approach is like we try to make a lot of sensible defaults for people. So you can get something up and running, but like I would say with anything as a developer, it's like you're gonna get a better quality if you have someone with kind of deep technical knowledge to look at it.
Yeah.
After you do like, okay, we have the MVP, but like maybe when you start scaling up and you get a lot of usage, you're probably going to have someone come in and take a look at it, right? Like, especially with like things like SQL.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of really poorly written SQL because people who wrote it, they're like front end engineers who don't know SQL,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, I have a very core memory of like, my first job, and so the database platform that we're using was like IBM DB2. And I had only done things in SQL, like 'cause in college, like that was the database platform that we used a lot. And like DB2 is not substantially different, but is a little bit different. And like, things like indices and stuff like that is a bit different. And I remember, like, I went to a DBA to ask him a question. He was like looking at, like, on his side, on the database side, like the execution path for some queries that I was writing, and he just like ripped into me. He's like, have you only written SQL in your entire life?" Like, and it was just one of those things, like, crusty DBA is like a meme that is definitely true, right? But
Yeah.
it made me realize, like, how, depending on what your, I guess, core skill set, like how much certain things matter. Because I didn't really think, 'cause like, oh, the database query comes back quick. I had a question about something else. But for him, it was like, you know, 400 milliseconds too slow or whatever it was, because he cared about that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, and those things compound with the more information you have, right? Like, if you're doing this query and it performs well with like 1,000 records, and then let's say, okay, well, how does it perform over 1,000,000 records? Is
Yeah.
it going to bring your database to a crawl, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's also just kind of fascinating in general, like the whole, idea that it's not as simple as just writing like a query, right? Especially like in this phase that we're talking about with, like, more complex search. Like, we're talking about things like metadata and things like weighting and all these sort of things that are concepts specifically to like that kind of search. So if you come from a background where it's like, oh, I'm just querying a database, like there's all these different concepts you have to learn as well.
oh yeah. So bringing back information for like a search query, right? So like you said, weightings. So you can match against things in multiple fields, but that's assigning like, okay, what is of the most importance to the type of search that I'm doing at this moment in time,
Yeah.
right? Like, so maybe I want to influence some of the relevancy based on like some like metadata tagging, but what's more important to me are these other specific fields. And if it's like, if the term I'm looking for is in there versus just kind of like in this less important field, like those results are kind of like of higher
Yeah.
relevance, right, for that
Oh, for
particular
sure.
problem.
I mean, it's just a fascinating area of study, right? Like, it makes sense to me. Like, you've kind of, I mean, I don't know if the phrase "falling in love" works, but it's like you've kind of built like this entire, thought around it enough to like start building things in that space, like
Hmm.
people can take advantage of.
Yeah, yeah, we're very passionate about it, and like it's one of those things, we'll get a new project that comes in, and we look at the data and we're like, oh, like we should take this approach for this data set. It would,
Sure.
and like these groups of kind of like, let's build a synonym library around this particular set of data that would work very well for this, for what people are trying to find.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's fascinating to me. Like, I think we can just keep on talking about search, because I mean it's just such a broad area of study, and it, depending on what the user is, like their expectations are a bit different.
Hmm.
As we wrap up, I'd love to, kind of get your thoughts, is like, what do you think like the future of search is? Like, are we gonna start going more and more down this path of, give me like a, asking a question or a request for information versus like more keyword, or, like, I guess my question is like, how far into this world are we going to get to in the near term, where it's like people are asking for a very specific thing and they're just expecting to get that very specific thing back?
I think it comes down to like I said, user intention, right? Also, it comes down to like what interface are they searching through.
Yeah.
So if I'm making a search query through my phone and I'm driving, I'm talking to it, I would say like I want to find some restaurants on South Broadway that are open after 5 o'clock. That's more of a question and answer kind of format, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So the API has to know how to handle that versus like if I just want to quickly type a keyword in because I'm on a website and I don't want to ask a question. I just want to find something really fast. It has to be able to handle that as well. I think with this whole like growth of AI, people are leaning more towards this question answer format.
Mm-hmm.
And I think eventually we're going to go to this kind of more ephemeral computing kind of like method of finding information
Sure.
on the road, right? Like where like I want to be able to like talk to my phone or through my AirPods or whatever and get information back. But the infrastructure underneath is going to have to be kind of like tuned for those different experiences, I think.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. It's also going to be fascinating just in general, like, like you said, the intent of the user is probably going to change too, like as we get more and more into
Mhm.
this. This has been a great conversation, Don. It's been really great to get to know you and learn about, how you got started and how you got into search. And there's a couple of things I wanted to talk about that we didn't even have time for, like the whole idea of like publishing and that
Mhm.
industry and how it's been completely altered in the last like 25, 30 years, right? And I think there's opportunity to do those kind of sort of chats in the future. Um, you know, and one of the things that, as what are some parting words that you have for us? Like, things that you're thinking about, like on top of where you see search going, like some things that you're thinking about from AI, tech in general.
Yeah, I mean, I touched on a little bit, but I think as people who make developer tools, it's very important to think about building for all levels of builders and all types of builders, right? And with these generative tools coming out now, more than ever before, people from all different backgrounds are building things, right? And so you can kind of take the stance of like, do I want to be accessible to that audience or not, right?
Yeah.
And for
Yeah.
me, I want to be accessible to the widest group of people as possible,
Sure.
and enabling them to build. So like if it's just like a non-technical founder who needs to get an MVP out the door quickly, like build the tooling in place to enable that, right? So I think a lot of dev tool companies should really consider like looking into new things like MCP and other ways for to get their form into the hands of those builders.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more, and I think that's really a great place to leave the conversation. And for folks that maybe are curious about some of the things that Don and his team are doing at Searchcraft, one place you can find him is on Blue Sky. So it's at donmackinnon.dev. So DonMackinnon.dev. There'll also be some links down below, some other places to find him, as well as a link to Searchcraft and all the cool things that they're doing. Um, you know, do you have anything before we sign off, my friend?
Yeah, no, probably not. I mean, people feel free to, if you have questions about search, information discovery, or MCP or whatever, just hit me up on Blue Sky or wherever.
Yeah. Awesome. This was great. So, and again, Don, thank you so much for the time to chat with me, and thank you for the folks that are tuning in live as well as listening to the future. So, my name is Isaac Clevin, and this has been Coffee and Open Source. And for my friend Don, enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.